Gentlemen, my name is Ajala Peter. So today we shall be dealing with quadratic equation. Quadratic equation. Now, basically, people misinterpret quadratic equation with quadratic expression. Now, what makes an equation an equation is a sign called the equal to sign. So in any given expression, in anything mathematical we are given, that this sign does not exist, it is not yet an equation. So when I'm dealing with quadratic equation, it is defined as the product of two simple linear factors equating to zero. It's defined as the product of two simple linear factors. Now, what do I mean by simple linear? If I should give you x minus 2, this is a linear expression. If I should give you x minus 2 minus 2 equals to 0, this is a simple linear equation. Why is this an equation? Because of this sign. And this is an expression because it has nothing like this sign. It doesn't have the equal to sign. It's just a mere expression. So simple linear expressions, linear equations always have the power of the unknown to be maximum of 1. The power of the unknown is always to be maximum of 1. So you can have below 1. But power is yours, maximum of 1. So as this, I have x raised to power 1 minus. This one also have an x, but this is just 2x raised to power 0. As we all know, x raised to power 0 equals to 1, so it comes back to this x minus 2. So that is the concept of expression and equation. So like I said, if a quadratic expression can be defined as the product of two simple linear factors. Now, there are different methods of solving quadratic equation. We have the factorization method, we have complete square method, we have the formula method, even the graphical method. But today we may not be discussing the graphical method, but basically we'll be talking about those first three methods. Now, quadratic equation, for instance, as maybe we are given x squared plus 7x minus 14 equals to 0. Now, this is a quadratic equation. And basically, the idea of the quadratic equation is that it has the highest power of what? 2. So you can have x raised to power 2, here will be x raised to power 1, here is x raised to power 0. So the highest power it has is power of 2. Now, if we are to solve this, finally we will be getting two brackets. X will be having x plus 5 and x minus 2. X minus 2. Okay, this is supposed to be 10 then. To be 10 and x minus 2. So even now checking this, everything will be equal to 0. Okay, better still, let me say this is a simple linear expression. This is also a simple linear expression. Something is bringing them together, which is multiplication. That's also product. So now multiplication of two simple linear expressions liberates a quadratic expression. Why, when those product of two simple linear equations equates to 0, it liberates quadratic equation. Quadratic equation. Now let's deal with the methods. Let's deal with the methods. Now, like I've said, we have 4 methods. The first method is factor method, in which generally known as factorization. Then number 2 is completing the square method. And the third one is the formula method. Also known as the quadratic formula. Some people call it almighty formula, all the same. It's still talking about formula. Okay, now we shall discuss this one after the other. So let's start with the factorization method. I would like you to be very attentive. Factorization method. Now, as its name implies, factorization, meaning that for us to be using this method, something is very crucial, and that thing is factors. Without factors, factorization method is impossible. So we must make use of what we call the factors. And mind you, when I was explaining quadratic expression, I said it can be defined as the product of two factors. Meaning this quadratic itself, quadratic equation, quintic equation, quartic equation, everything involves what? Factors. So even if we are to mention number one method to solve them, it is always a factorization method. Why? Because they are all made up of what? Factors. Their source, the atoms that made them up is what? Factors. So now let's start factor method. Now let's just treat a question. Okay, let's treat it as we have x squared 10 minus 10, then I have my x here plus okay. Now let's assume we are given this equation. X squared plus 3x minus 10 equals to 0. How do we get this? How do we make use of factorization method? Now there are rules to follow. Now most times whenever I'm dealing with something like this, I always like to give rules. As in the way we have laws of indices, the way we have laws of logarithm, the way we have laws of sort. I always like to give laws that you will just have to follow, and you don't need to cram this thing. You just have to what? To solve it. Consistency makes you the best. It makes you good at it. Okay. So I'm moving on. Now the law says first rule. So let's just write as we solve. Now first rule. Rule number 1. This rule states that what? Find the product of A and C. Now in this equation, there are 3 basic components there, which are the A, we have the B, and we have the C. Those are 3 things there. Now, how do we know the A, how do we know the B, and how do we know the C? It is very simple. Now, at the front of this x squared, at the back rather, we have a number called 1, unity. Meaning, behind every unknown, there are always things that are constant. As I am now, I am still me times 1 is still me. As I am, me raised to power 1 is still me. You don't get it? Me times plus is still me. So in the front of this thing, there is an invisible plus, there is a 1, there is a raised to power 1 again. So it always exists. So as this A is standing, there is a raised to power 1, it's still A. There is a 1 times this, it's still A. There is a positive there, it's still A. So they just stay like that. So the coefficient of this thing is what? Is 1. And in short, the coefficient of unknowns or ordinary numbers is always equal to 1. Is always equal, except in some cases. So now here the coefficient of x here is what? 3, and here I have a constant. I mean a constant because it has no unknown, it has no variable behind it. So now my A is regarded as the coefficient of x squared, which is 1. The coefficient of x is my B, 3, and my constant is minus 10. Mind you, don't ignore your sign, it's very important. So you don't say your C is 10, rather you say it is minus 10, negative 10. Exactly. Okay, now since we've gotten our A, B, and C. Now the first rule says that what? Product of A and C. Multiply A with C. So I'll be having AC, right? Now to check this, let me write the equation. X squared plus 3x minus 10 equals to 0. What's my A? This is my A, right? Times my C. I'll be having minus 10x squared. Is this clear? Now moving on. The second law now says that well, find the factors. Find the factors of AC. It's very simple. Now what are the factors of AC? How do we know that? Okay, you can just have a table. What is my major thing I'm looking for? Minus 10x squared, right? And now what can divide 10x squared? Minus 10x squared. Probably the first thing we would think of is minus 2x can go. So minus in minus I have plus, right? 2 in this I have 5, x in x squared I have x left. Isn't it? Good. Okay, what else can go here? It's just plus 5, right? I think. Yes? It's just plus 5. Plus 5x. which will be giving us what? 1, isn't it? Now, this is what you do. Now, looking at it, I can find my factors already. I can see them. How? How can I find them? How am I seeing them? This is it. Do you work in a slant manner? How? Now, this works with that, like this. This works with everything here. As many we have, as many as that's where it goes all along. That's where it goes all along. Now, for instance, okay, let me just explain that concept to you. Let me assume I have 20 here now. I want to find factors of 20. This is 2 in 20, I have 10, right? Okay. 2 in 10, I have 5, right? 5 in 5, I have 1. This is it. The first factor, you work with it diagonally. So the first factor is 2 and 10. 2 and 10. The next one is 5. It's not 5 and 2. It's 5 and everything that is above. So 5 and 2 times 2 is what? 4. They are in 5 and 4. Now this one too is plus everything above. So 1 and 5 times 2, 10. 10 times 2, 20. That's what I'm applying here now. I hope you understand that concept. That's what I'm applying here now. So now the first one is what? 5 and 2x, right? So I'll be having what? 2x, negative 2x, right? And positive 5x. The second one is 1 and 5 times 2 plus 5x minus times minus 2x is equal to what? Negative 10x. And what? Plus 1. Plus 1, right? It will be plus 1x rather. No, sorry. Okay, this time this will be carrying squared. So it will be plus 1, isn't it? Okay, now moving on. That's the for us to get arrive at 1. Those are the factors we can never have for our negative 10x squared. Those are the factors we can have. So now let's move on. I'm letting you understand the basics of finding factors. Okay, now moving on. Now since we've gotten what are the factors we got? We had negative 2x and positive 5x. Same, we have negative 10x squared and 1. Now check it. Now since we've gotten our factors right now, the next rule now says that what? Difference. Find the one whose difference or sum equates b. Now what is my b? My b is 3, right? Now we've gotten this. You want to check the one whose sum or the difference. When I say difference, I mean subtracting them. When I say sum, I mean adding them. Now let's check it out. Minus, we can have this in different ways now. Like let me add up to it. I can have this one can be plus 2x here and minus 5x here. I'm changing the sign now. And what? Minus 5x here. This one can be positive 10x squared and what? Minus 1 here. So which of them give us 3x? Let's find it. 10x squared minus 10 is not giving us at all. Now moving on, 2x minus 5x. You are owing me 5 naira and you paid me 2 naira. How much are you owing me? You owe me 3 naira. That's negative 3x, right? Do we have negative 3x here? No. So it is still not working. Now this one is cannot work. Now as for this, you are owing me 2 naira and you paid me 5 naira. You'll be having a balance of what? As gain is positive now, 3x. Is that equal to that? Yes, so this is what we'll be using. So we've gotten what we'll be using as our factor. You find that the factors, they are making use of factors to solve it. That's why it is called factorization method. Do you understand the concept? Okay, now moving on. Now if I have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals to 0. Now let's start. I have x squared plus open brackets 3x minus 10 equals to 0. I want to substitute this one. The next one now says substitute factors into substitute factors with b. Okay, yes, with b. That is, I should replace it. It may also be called replacement method. I should replace this with whatever I have it, since they are equal. Since they are what? Equal. So I can now move on by saying x squared plus open bracket. This 3x is also equal to what? Minus 2x plus 5x. Everything minus 10 equals to 0. I hope you understand what I'm doing. Okay, so I can now have x squared plus times minus 2x plus times plus 5x minus 10 equals to 0. Now we can now have it in 4 places. Now the major reason why we have to factorize and stuff like that is because for us to use the factorization method, I said it can define as product of two simple linear factors, and whatever we call linear has to be in form of x raised to power 1 and x raised to power 0. And for that to occur, I must have two things together. I must have what? Two things together. So one of the variable will be raised by 1, the other variable will be raised by 0. I must have them together. So now there's no way I can make theory stand in 2 equal to. No, it is impossible. So I have to make them 4. That's why I applied factorization so that they can be 4. So now moving on. So I have the opportunity to group them now into 2's. I hope you understand. Now let's factorize. Factorization, you were taught in this as well. So you check what is common there. X is common. I can have x raised into bracket x minus 2 plus what is common here? 5 is common. What's left? X. What will be left here? Minus what? 2 equals to 0. And there's another. Whatever you have in this bracket must be equal to whatever you have in this bracket. Once you find out what you have here is not equal to what you have here, then your mistake is within this place. Your mistake is within this place. So you have to check this. Whatever is in here must be equal to whatever is in here. So if I have x minus 2 here and I have x plus 2 here, I'm not correct. I need to check. Exactly. Okay, so the point is now, since these two are equal, you pick just one of them. X minus 2. Now, what are the things outside? I have x plus 5. X plus 5 outside, right? Into another bracket. Everything will now be equal to 0. And true. What did I define quadratic equation to be? I said it can be defined as a product of what? Two simple linear factors. This is a factor, this is a factor. When they are equal to 0. Quite easily done. That's it about factorization method. That's that about factor. I hope you understand. So that's just that about factorization method. So